You're listening to Heal Through Humor, hosted by yours truly, Talia Bombola. I'm a licensed therapist on a mission to help others learn about themselves and laugh along the way. Everyone, and welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor, my live podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I am excited for him to come back. This is his second time, and we are going to be talking about everything dating post-divorce, relationships, you name it, we will cover it today. So if you have a question that you think we could answer, please put it in the comments and we will get to it if we're able to. Other than that, think of it like a podcast and just join in and our conversation. And we'll give Instagram a minute because sometimes it takes a little bit. Hello, how are you?
Hey Talia, what's up?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Can you hear me and see me okay?
I can. Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes. I'm trying out one of these ring lights, so if it like topples over, you know what happened.
Blair Witch style, lifetime.
Exactly.
Yes.
I did it last time and I ended up having to hold it the entire time, so keep it real.
That happens. I have a ring light too. It has a tripod in it, so I don't have to hold it anymore. But there have been times where the clip broke and I'm like, I guess we're doing it. I guess we're live. Yeah. So what have you been up to, working on? Catch me up. It's been a while.
Yes, just following your lead and trying to create memes to bring happiness to the world and make everything more relatable. The shit show that is dating and divorce and all that stuff. Yes,
memes are just so nice. And we had chatted a little bit. I think originally my page was not designed the way that it is now. Was just like, I think this is funny and I have something to say about it. Here's a meme and caption. And then that kind of took off and now they're coming back, I think. And the relatability piece is huge though. I think it's so nice to see something and be like, wait, I'm not the only one who goes through this and I can laugh at it. Like, perfect.
Definitely. And it makes people like trust you more. Humor is just the way that we connect. I mean, I think like if I can't laugh at something, especially myself, then I can't relate to it. So, yes. I mean, anybody out there dating knows if this is just pure comedy. So let's laugh about it.
Yeah, if you would like dating to be easier than the hellscape it often is, you definitely have to learn to laugh at yourself and not necessarily at the other person, but with them, right? Like, oh my gosh, this date didn't go as well as we thought it would, right? Like being able to have it roll off your back faster, I think helps too.
Yeah, and that's a muscle that you have to build. So I think, especially when you're doing it after divorce, you're like, last time I did this, we were 22 going to the bar with my friends. Now I'm 45 and I'm meeting somebody for the first time in a random bar that I've texted with. It's a lot. Yeah. The landscape, I think, has changed a lot now that it's like online dating is more the norm and it's almost weirder to meet people in person. Kind of like phone calls were normal and texting was weird. And now it's like an atrocity if somebody tries to phone call somebody and they're like, oh, just text me instead. I think it's like swapped over the years. I mean, kids today, I think like how much easier it is to be like in 9th grade and just ask a girl out when you're doing it via text. That was like a visceral fear of rejection that we had. That is like kids today, they're like, I'll just throw an emoji at them and see if they respond. And now we're boyfriend, girlfriend.
You're like, I'm probably still dating like 5 people from kindergarten.
Yeah.
We had that pact that if we were both single by 40 that we would be together.
That's so true. Yes. Oh, we're going to see how the effect that it has on kids and adults, because I think I'm a big believer in like our brains are not wired for all of this connection and like the ease of it. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we'll see. We're all in it together.
True. I think I never saw High School Musical, but I know that one of their songs is "We're all in this together," and that kind of plays faintly in the distance when I hear things like that.
Well, that's a big thing, I think, with divorce is when you go through a divorce, like you're kind of isolated, you're like ostracized in some ways from your community, even if it's just in your head. True. And so I think that's why it's so important to form community with other people that are going through it, or else you really do feel like you're the only person that's going through this.
Yes, and having books and therapists and coaches and social media, especially to be connected to, even if you're not like meeting with like dating, even if you're not meeting with them in person, to get that support, knowing like, oh, I'm not the only one, or I'm not the only one who felt like I would never find love again after divorce. That's another limiting belief I think a lot of people benefit from rewiring is understanding in some ways you don't actually want to find that exact kind of love again because it didn't work out for some reason or another. So let's upgrade it. Like, it's not a bad thing if you never find that specific thing again, because you could find something better is an upgraded version of that belief.
But what I learned when I watched, I learned all my psychology and relationship stuff now through Instagram, is that you don't know that you're, I guess, wired to have chemistry with that person. And if you don't have chemistry, then this isn't worth doing. And then in reality, you find yourself in the same cycle again. So I'm a big proponent of, like, have your fun, make your mistakes, but like, let's not go into this pattern again. You've already been divorced. Why? Like, let's try and hold on to the steering wheel and just say, this is not working out. Let's get out of it before we're married again, and up to like 70% divorce rate the second time around.
Yes. And I think that statistic, learning about statistics has always fascinated me, and seeing that it changes more. And we've talked about that in one of my classes, and we all had our, ideas of why, and obviously the research states why in some ways. And it's looking at it like you're more likely, because it's like, I've already had the sting once. I know what it's like. It's not as scary. Is it preferable? No, but it's not as scary. And I'm more likely to catch very early on if I don't want to be with this person. If I didn't catch it in dating and we ended up getting married, I don't have the sting of it. I'm more likely to leave and be like, okay, like, I know what divorce is like. I know I can move on and find somebody. That's why I'm with you, about to get divorced to you again. Like, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off, but the goal is that you figure that out prior to making that next level of a commitment and spending more time in dating. Even if we don't like it, I think it's much better to spend time in dating, figuring it out before making that step towards marriage.
Yeah. Why do you think people, like, after they get a little bit comfortable, there's a rush to, like, okay, we gotta lock this in? Is it just insecurity? Is it just like we don't know how to sit in that little bit of uncertainty? Or what are we now?
I think it's both. I think the insecurity piece can come from our attachment styles. So if we are more anxiously attached, we have a higher threshold and desire for intimacy and connection that may or may not match our partners. And so if it doesn't match our partners, the brain can almost be like, well, let's just lock them in, right? If they're not doing it now, maybe if we're more secure, or we have a higher level of relationship status, they'll do it then. We make that faulty assumption sometimes. Or we are both pressuring and moving towards it being locked down, in which case, if that were a couple I was seeing, I would want to analyze what is driving that pressure for both of you. Do you have a fear the person will leave? Do you have a fear somebody else is going to come in and take them? Do you feel like this was just modeled to you? Maybe every other person in their family got married after 6 months, so this is kind of just their template they're working from. I think it can be any or all of the above. And sometimes it works out to get married quickly. I mean, like, look at multiple decades ago, but then you have to add in, there was not all these factors of availability of alternate matches, online dating. We didn't know as much about attachment styles and communication styles. That was just like what people did, which, as we also know in society, isn't always the best thing to do just because it's been done for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grandma and grandpa that have been married for 70 years might actually be miserable and hate each other. They just didn't know there was an alternative. So I think what you're doing today, it's like it's very important, because people have this, like, freedom, but we also don't know what to do with it. And we have these apps that are like, here's keys to a Ferrari, go drive it, try not to crash, try not to.
I have a provisional license. Good luck.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Good analogy. Yeah. And I think knowing that you can, dating or relating to people is a skill that you can learn and you can hone in on and get better at. Many people aren't told that. So if this is the first time you're hearing it, please go back and replay this so you can really digest that. It's something you learn over time. And the more practice you have in the direction of, this is healthy, this is unlike the old patterns that I don't like, you now integrate that, and that's your new standard. Whereas what you were talking about earlier, a lot of people do fall into, like, well, this is what I've always done. And it is scary to do a new thing, but I'm just not going to try it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think younger people, I always think, like, if we could change, even my kids are like, why are we learning about social studies in school? And I'm like, I have no idea why. I really don't know why you're learning pretty much 90% of this.
Yeah.
What would be cool is, like, can we get, like, a relationships 101 class, red flags, maybe debate, improv, like all these things that would help people? I wonder, are you seeing, like, younger people, like, getting more knowledge around it and more interested. I hope that's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. I have a lot of teens that I work with, and they, like we talked about, they will find it through social media, and at least they have me, and I'm sure like other teens who see therapists, they have their therapist to go to filter the information they're learning. They do have an increased interest in that, and they are more emotionally aware, though their brain development lacks that emotional regulation and control at times. They do want to get better at it. There's like now a desire to learn more and be a different in a more positive way than their parents might be with them. So I think there is a push for it. And much like we're seeing, oh, you're learning all these really unnecessary things in school now, and you have to wait until you're older or use alternate forms of education to learn emotions and relationships. I would almost like to see the opposite, where we teach you how to be a human being and relate to others. And then you can utilize Instagram if you want to learn about history, right? Or you can use
Right.
TikTok if you want to learn about something else. That, yes, if you want to dedicate your life to that and study that and be a PhD in history, go for it. Definitely not knocking history. That's just not everybody's strong suit or desire. And the rapid expansion of communication and information dissemination that technology provided, we weren't prepared for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it also shows how antiquated the school system is, because we're using the same lesson plans really from decades ago, when people weren't living as long. There weren't these apps. There weren't like,
Right.
it's just too much at once to possibly keep up with. But we're like, this, just like in dating, well, this feels comfortable, even if we know these kids are never going to need to know about the Civil War. That's much more important than teaching them how to set a boundary. Like,
Yeah, it really is crazy. Like something even as simple as like math. I'm like, okay, but we could just take out our calculator today. Yeah, it's interesting to see what kids are learning and what's really important. And I think that is, I think we're probably going to be one of the first generations that have access to this info that can, like, I can now model what a relationship should look like to my kids. Whereas, past generations, it's like if your parents don't understand it, you're like, well, yeah, they were raised by wolves. Like, how would they know that grandma says, attachment there, all these things. So
yeah.
I think it's like going to be interesting that if we can take what we're learning and pass it on to the next generation, it can really like break a cycle.
Yes. Yeah. I think like some of the youngest clients I've seen, I mean, besides like little kids right now, the age range of like 14 to 16, it's very on the rise for them to want to go to therapy and seek help with this, because they're so aware, perhaps through social media, talking to a friend at school, what have you, of what's going on in the world and in their relationships, of like, oh, wait, I never learned how to communicate that way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, why am I so anxious when they don't text me back? And being able to sit there and share with them, like, you probably have anxious attachment, and I wish somebody told me that when I was 14 too, because it would have saved me a lot of heartbreak. Here's a book, give it a read if it works for you. And a lot of them come back and are like, thank you, that actually helped me feel like I won't be alone forever, or that I'll never find love. And to hear that out of my 14 to 16-year-old sample size, it's like, wow, like that fear is something adults have that I've seen, and now teenagers are starting to have it. So the trickle down concerns are happening in lifetime too.
Right. It's so confusing because there's so much wrong and addictive with social media. And there's like so many things that I look at that are just like, ugh, I cringe even the thought of my kids being exposed to it, but I know they will. But then at the same time, there's so much fantastic stuff too.
Yes.
So like learning how I can barely figure out how to discern it. So like if we can find ways where, okay, if you want to watch something really dumb and, watch your Mr. Beast videos, that's great. But let's also like learn something too from somebody that can really explain it. It's it's impactful. But yeah, it's again giving all of us access to something that we're not necessarily ready for. Yeah.
Yes, or not qualified, I think. And somebody, I'm going to blank on her name. It'll come to me by the end of it. She posted that just because somebody has like the blue verification mark or what have you in their social media, that doesn't mean they're qualified to be talking about what they're talking about. It just means that they've passed the necessary requirements for the app to give them that. Yeah. And it's for mental health. It's way too nuanced to read one post and be like, oh, that's me. Because we all project onto it. I see what I want to. I don't see what I don't want to see, or I might be completely asleep in my subconscious mind to knowing that that actually is accurate. And then I get triggered by it, or I'm defensive, or what have you. Like the human psyche is there's so many layers to it, and it's so in depth once you really dive in. it can't possibly be covered in one post. And I've talked to other therapists as well that are like, I go to write one and then I realize how many other things I'll have to caveat if I want it to feel thorough and ethical, and I just don't post it because there's so much to it. And it's almost enviable in other career paths that people are like, oh, I'm just going to post it because I think like that. I'm like, I miss not being backed by the ethics and the license to just say what I want to say, but I'm glad that I have that because it requires us to filter and go, this could be it or it could not be, right? And that's what my Q&A a lot, like, it could be this, but I don't know you and your family and your life history and your generational genealogy or any of that. I can't really give you a sound, recommendation, but off the cuff, this could be it. And some people are like, thank you, that was it. And some people are like, this makes sense, and they go on their own thing. I'll my therapist, and I'm like, good. So I hope.
Exactly. I know I watched a holistic psychologist video. She does these like role plays where it's like a mom and her daughter. I'm like, this is so brilliant. I sent to my sister, actually. I'm like, oh my God, is this us? Is this what we're, she's like, oh yeah, 100%. I was like, oh, I had no idea. It's good to be able to put words and labels to it. And yeah,
I've sent those to my brother as well. I was like, this thing. He's like, I'm like, how did we grow up? And obviously the answer is because everybody has their own perception. I'm like, we grew up in the same house with the same parents. Okay. Like, you were there, whether you had the intake of the information the same way I did or not. Like, that's my perspective. So it is nice to have content to use as like a jumping off point for conversation. So maybe like a discernment and use class of social media would be helpful in high school and college as well. Like, here's internet etiquette for comments. You don't just say everything that you feel to the entire world, because that can come back to bite you. And once you put it out on the internet, there are screenshots. Even if you delete it, it exists forever on somebody's phone camera roll. Like, really thinking of that long term. And that's not the strong suit of the developing brain, which is the majority user of a lot of these apps. Our front isn't developed till 25, sometimes later, depending on other factors, maybe earlier. Again, there's outliers. That's a long time. That's a quarter of a century that we're working on trying to be more critical in our thinking, but we're consuming all of this media, and that's shaping your brain and your beliefs along the way. So I strive to encourage people to be really diligent about what they're consuming food-wise and content-wise. Both of those things make you feel certain ways, right? I wouldn't feel great if I only ate junk food all the time, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it occasionally, right? I binge watching Netflix, but I set a timer so I don't go down the rabbit hole, and I get a little taste of it, but then I go back to reality.
Yeah. Well, I like that line where they say you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself most with.
Yes.
And today, a lot of that is what you're consuming online. So you might not even be seeing 5 friends that much during the week, but if you're watching this person over and over again, it's going to have an effect on you. So you really do have to be mindful of what you're consuming. And I mean, for me, I need to like put the phone in the other room, or else I'm hopeless to it.
Yeah. One of my love languages is quality time. And so for myself and like my circle of people, whether I share that with them when we first meet, or they kind of discern that by being around me, I'm very big on no phones or no technology as a distraction or disruption, because quality time is so important to me. And typically the people who have filtered in my life are like, that makes sense. And it's nice and lets me know that they're attentive if the phone is down, if it's in another room, or if there's, hey, I want to give you my time, but I do need to answer this. More communication around it, I think, can help as well, rather than we're just hanging out with somebody or going on a date. I never, thankfully, had that experience where a date was on their phone, minus like, hey, when can we meet up again? And the calendar app came out. But I've heard from my clients, they were like on their phone the whole time. And I've seen that before with other couples. And my partner and I joke, and I'm like, why would you go out to dinner and spend all that money, like nice restaurants, if you're just both going to be on your phone the whole time? Like, just order takeout and do that. Like, it's just, it's a social phenomenon that I find fascinating. But it isn't. They designed the apps to be that way, but you have to your brain and transcend like that urge to be on, this thing all the time that brings you more than any human interaction ever could. That's like 1,000 things in a minute that you could technically see. I'm obviously hyperbolizing. A human's not going to be that interesting. When I work with teens and they're like, well, I asked them to put their phone down and then they got mad at me, and I'm like, well, what did you reward them? And they're like, no. And I'm like, Okay, so what happened is you asked them to do something you wanted so you would feel better as the parent. They did the thing, they get nothing from it except losing out on connection, and
Mm,
you get to feel better because they gave you what you want. Do you see how that's lopsided? And they're
yeah.
like, oh, I'm like, you have to reward them with a conversation, with being interested. You can't just go around dictating, like, stop doing that, start doing this. I want it this way, because it's not going to model for them effective communication patterns in their relationships either.
Wow, that's exactly what I do, Talia. I'm like,
Well,
turn it off, turn the game off, turn the game off, and no,
have to
no,
give
no. And then he,
something worth it to turn it off for, right? Turn it off, we're gonna have dinner. Turn it off, we're gonna play a board game. Turn it, and then I'm big on humor, as you know. So when it's like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's like, oh, I know, we're gonna play a board game, and it's the worst because family time. But you're gonna like this when you're older, and it's gonna avoid more therapy for you. And they're like, fine. So I think it helps. It helps when you give them a reward that's not just you feeling better, but
right,
we don't we don't unless we're taught, we don't think to give the other person a reward because it's we feel good, right? And
right.
the other person's going to do what it takes to make them feel good. But that whole parental approval seeking piece, they're like, I really want your love and affection, but I really want to be my own person. And that's a
Yeah.
really tough.
And I think a lot of it for me is like I'm probably projecting, like I'm on my phone a lot. I see my kid on their phone or on the computer a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling him get off the phone as I'm
Yeah.
probably on the phone. So it's like this
Yeah.
vicious cycle of like modeling and like what? Why am I even telling him to get off? It's like I want some control because I see how addictive it is. It is a real mind fuck. It's like
Yeah.
very complicated, and I think we're like all parents say like, oh, we dealt with this when we were kids. I'm like, this is very different. That was a
You have a time. Yeah.
TV that you could turn off in the other room. Like this is like a whole new beast that we're dealing with. So I have a lot of empathy and like struggle with figuring all of this out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something we're taught. And as much as I still think there's 2 points, I still think there's merit in seeking advice or feedback from older generations and future generations, but how did they handle it and what do they think was similar? Like what were they going through that was similar to it? Of, well, they were always out with their friends, they were always at sports, like otherwise occupied attention is what I like to call it. That's not new. It's what was occupying the attention that changes decade over decade. So we can learn how did they handle it back then, and we can learn what to do and not do. And then moving forward, how do we want to interact and what type of relationship do you want to have with your kids, your significant other, et cetera, 5 to 10 years from now? That starts today by making certain choices that are in alignment with I want to be connected. I want to be communicating regularly. I want to go on family trips, like whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
What I have to do to lay the groundwork, because a lot of what parents struggle with is their kids, especially with like dating post-divorce too, and you're trying to maybe blend families, you want them to be in alignment with you or kind of this like congruent positive relationship at a certain point. But if we're not nurturing that along the way and we just have this expectation it'll just work itself out, it won't often, because
Mm-hmm.
we're taken for granted. And I'm sure you can feel this. I felt this, taken for granted by people. It doesn't feel great, especially when it's a family relationship or a dating
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And a phone is a very easy thing that can distract us. So if you set it aside, already like 20% less likely to be taken for
Yeah.
granted. Say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with like leaving a relatively unhealthy relationship, and there's a big variance on how unhealthy it is, and then getting into a new one,
Yep.
and then your kids being around it. There's so much like newness and nuance. Like, well, how do we do this? Or we're used to mommy and daddy fighting, or
Yeah.
we're like it's very complicated for the parents and the kids. So I'm always thinking like, what's the best? I always tell people like just go slowly, like make your hangouts short in the beginning. Everybody's like, how quick should we blend, or should they meet the kids? And it's
Yeah.
like, go to ice cream for 30 minutes and then
Yeah.
just really like dip your toe in, because
Yeah.
it is a confusing thing for like the parents and the kids. And
Yeah. Yeah. I come at it from the perspective of, if you are the person dating like post divorce or post split and you have kids and you're in the position where you could blend families, we'll say that. Do you like the person, or are you still figuring that out? If you're in the figuring it out phase, which could take a while, it could take like 6-8 months,
mm-hmm.
and it's going to cramp your lifestyle a bit if you can't blend or introduce them. However, the long-term benefit of not having that influence potentially mess with your kid's developmental psyche. And there's a lot that goes into it. When I've done like the training I took was infant, child, and adolescent psychoanalysis. So we really go in the mind of what that's like. What reactions are they going to have feeling dethroned, even if a new sibling comes along in the same biological family set? Like understanding where your kid might be feeling. You could really like somebody and they have no buy-in to like that person because that's not my parent. You like them, right? And the parent gets personally offended. It's like, well,
Yeah.
you don't need to go on the defense of this new person. You need to side with your child and understand why it's hard for them to see you give attention to somebody who's not their parent and who's not them. So and like that blending question is like, it's going to take as long as it takes. And this is one perspective. If the person listening doesn't like it, scroll past. You don't have to take my advice. Wait until you have a knowledge of, I like this person. I would like to spend time with them. I'd also like to see how our families work and go as a friend for ice cream. Go for a picnic in the park. Just go out, see how kind of the waters are tested. And there will be a shift if the disclosure is, oh, we're actually seeing each other, and let the family have the reaction. Sometimes it's wonderful. And they're like, we were hoping for that. This is so great. And sometimes like, nope, sorry, mom, not a fan, because they're that protective role, right? And if the previous relationship was really unhealthy, I think the likelihood goes up that the child will want to go in and defend the parent because that may have been the role they assigned to themselves in an unhealthy family system. So like, as usual, a lot goes into it. And I wish sometimes I didn't learn all that I've learned because I can't unsee some things that people are like, wow, you think a lot. And I'm like, like a lot. I analyze everything that could go right and wrong. Yeah.
I still don't really know how to have the conversations, but what I'm learning from Instagram again and parent coaches, divorce coaches, relationship coaches is just listen. Just like be like, how are you feeling about that? This is weird. Just tell me. Don't try to teach, correct. Just like let them feel like they can at least express themselves. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, good talk, and it's like, I think that was better than what I was doing before, but yeah, it's very complicated for the parents, the kids, the new boyfriend, the ex. It's like, it's healthier than usually what they came from, but it doesn't mean it's like divorce. Like short term, it's going to get a lot more complicated, stressful in a lot of ways. But it's also going to be long term. That's something I always think about with divorce. Like you are choosing a bumpier path. Your life is probably going to get worse in the short term. Long term, it's going to be healthier. But that's very hard, probably evolutionary. Like we're just not wired to say, yep, I want to go broke and have to deal with lawyers and fight. Like, I'll just not rock the boat. But, if the point is to get our kids to see what a healthier relationship is, we have to bite the bullet and say, this is going to suck for a little while, but, it's going to be worth it.
Yes, the goal and the hope is that it's ultimately worth it in the end and can help set a better template. And I do wish, and it's like one of my aims, at least having like a platform, whatever, even that feels weird. I have a space to talk about things if people want to listen or not, that you are setting a tone and an example, whether it's a family or not, like with how you interact with people, with what you put on social media, with the jobs you choose, with this, like that lets people know kind of who you are and what you're about. And if a person is able to come at that from the perspective of, I'm leading by example. I would like to be a positive influence for the generations to come. I can only do so much. I'm only one human being. I am striving to make it as healthy as possible. And ultimately, there's going to be things that happen sometimes, unfortunately, not by choice. They're just like COVID, for example. That pandemic hit a lot of families. They weren't planning for it. Why would we be? Like, it upheaved a lot for a lot of families. And how and if do we repair from that? We can only do the best that we can. And I work with a lot of parents on, as long as you're striving to do the best that you can and educate yourself to the best of your abilities and your means, that heart that you're putting into it, that matters a lot. Like the feel that the family gets from, I'm trying, I might not be succeeding, but I want to let you know, like till the end of my life, I will try to give you guys a better life and a better family. And like, that's the effort is recognized.
Yeah, that's so awesome, because you do wonder, like, are children of divorce more likely to get divorced? And I don't know the stats or if that works, but the goal is, again, like, to show that a really unhealthy, toxic relationship is not something that you need to be in forever. And look,
Yeah.
mom or dad got out of it. So hopefully you'll
Yeah.
avoid it, and maybe you'll get divorced one day. But like the reality is just like being able to leave a relationship that's not serving you is something that's so hard for all of us. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
like, I mean, the breaker upper, either way, either
True.
side you're on, it's like a terrible thing that I think that's a big reason why people end up in these things. And then there's a stigma that, oh, we got divorced, it's a failure. And reality is, it's like, it's actually, it's not a great thing, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
a brave thing. It's like you're proactively doing something that
Yeah.
a lot of people don't have the courage to do, or,
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuance to like, divorce, leaving a relationship that's sad and painful, but it's also so much great things can come out of it.
Oh, yeah. And it's scary, especially if you are the first person in your family or any of your lineage, to your knowledge at least, to get divorced. Because again, older generations didn't really have there was more clandestine. There wasn't as much talk about it, or like, oh, you got pregnant out of wedlock, you're sent away for 9 months, or it's a shotgun wedding. Like there was a lot to try and cover up and keep up appearances. So it could be like, oh, well, they just fell off, or this happened, or so-and-so went crazy, or, all the things I've heard of like excuses to cover up. Yeah, they didn't have a good relationship. They felt pressured maybe into being married, or that was what everybody in society was doing. And they didn't have the means to leave. And often, especially in previous generations where women weren't afforded the same ability to work or have their own credit card or anything like that, financial dependence or like lifestyle, housing dependence on their romantic partner is often a cited reason why people stayed in relationships. And we don't have that anymore. Like you used to have to wait to leave a relationship until it got bad or that it was terrible. And then they're like, okay, now we have like the reason to get divorced. And society has shifted now where I could be happier elsewhere is an equally valid reason for people that they choose to get divorced, with or without giving it a try with their former partner. And there are people who are fixed mindset and they don't want to try counseling. It gets to a point in the relationship and they're like, even though this could help, even though this book could literally say your marriage could get better if you do these things, we have evidence-based practices. If you follow this protocol, it'll give you the best chance. There are still going to be people who go, no, thanks. It's just, and you may not know that about your partner until 5, 10, 15 years in. You may have found that out very early on, but you tucked it away because you were in denial and you didn't want to believe it because they had all these other great traits and they were the best person you dated so far. And so you're being with them, and then ultimately it came out and they're like, yeah, I told you from the start I wasn't going to go to couples therapy. And this is what I hear from women a lot. They're like, well, I just thought when you loved me you would change, because we're based creatures and we assume if you just feel differently about us then you'll do these things for us, and that's not necessarily how you operate. It doesn't mean you don't have feelings. That's definitely not what I'm saying. It's you don't do things, or you're not as easily manipulated or influenced by the same things and the same factors that we might be. And there's a delusional level I think people have to reach or choose to reach inadvertently when they are dating in the beginning. Why do people ignore red flags is a great question. Did you just not see it, or did you see it and think I can fix them? Or did you see it and go, that's a fun challenge?
Right. Or are you already like, I think once you're like sleeping with the other person and are getting comfortable and you have good feelings, it's very hard to say, oh, this thing, I really don't like it, but it's okay. My parents, that's how they were married. It's fine like that. Let me ask you, you mentioned couples counseling.
Yeah.
I'm always curious, like I hear mixed things about it. Everybody's like, oh, you got to go to couples therapy. And I'm like, I've heard that it really, I don't want to say doesn't work, but like if both people are not doing individual therapy is like what I think is your only chance of it working. What are your thoughts on couples therapy?
I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm happy you asked. I think couples therapy can work at like its most efficacy if both members are also an individual, mainly because us as the clinician treating the relationship. So it's not both partners that are our client, it's the relationship that's our client. And each relationship has a different goal, and not every goal is aligned between the two partners. So I'll have people come in sometimes both very active, very like, we want to make this work. Divorce is not an option for us. They're both on that camp. Our goal clearly is to do the deep work to remain committed. Some people come into couples therapy and they do not have the same goal. One wants out, one wants to stay or wants it to be better. and they're not always forthright. Not that they're being deceptive intentionally. Sometimes they don't realize they want out until we start doing the deeper work. And they're like, wait a second, that's who you are? No, I'm out. Or I have to do what work? It'll be easier for me with somebody else. All these beliefs start coming in. Or there's couples who are like, we do not want to be together anymore. We would like to have the discernment to decide if that's the best choice, or we want to move towards co-parenting help. So like there's more than that, but like 3 buckets I think that people fall into. When people report couples therapy really worked for us, typically what I've seen is they both had the buy-in that they wanted it to work. They picked a therapist who challenged them in the right ways and also didn't side too heavily with one or the other member of the couple. And I tell my couples from the start, there may be times where you feel like I'm taking one side over the other. That is not intentional. It's back to the couple relationship. If you chose to say, hey, we're in it, that's my client, whatever behavior is getting in the way of that happening, I'm going to focus on. And if it happens to be for 3 weeks in a row, person A is exhibiting that behavior, then this is also, to your point, why individual therapy is helpful. I manage so much in the hour or hour and a half I see you once a week, both of them once a week. You have to bring that up to your individual therapist. Hey, it felt unfair that she only talked about this. Let me know, right? And explain to you, it is not to try and pick on you, but you keep doing the thing that we've identified is not going to grow you. Why? Why does it come for you? Why is it scary to change? Why can't we do like, and I'm more directive, I think, than some therapists might be. Like, you'll get all the evidence-based techniques as a couples therapist. Some couples therapists are not good with couples, but because we're marriage family therapists, we think we have to work with couples. I've seen that too. Picking a therapist who's a good fit that you both agree on, and that can really call you out on the BS, so you're not growing in different directions. And I think the last point I will say on why some people, it's like such a stark difference of like, oh my gosh, it saved our relationship or it didn't work at all, is, do you actually want it to work and change when you're showing up? Separate from the goal, are you going there believing that it's going to work and being willing to seeing your partner in a whole new light? Or have you just resigned to be like, therapy's stupid, people can't change? Like, what are your limiting beliefs? And maybe it just was a bad therapist. It wasn't a good fit. So.
Yeah. Or I imagine so much of the time it's the wife or the husband that's like, I really want to change. I want to do this. And the other one's just sitting there like going through the motions, or I don't want to change. I don't know what you say to those people, except, and you did a video about it, like if the other person doesn't want to change, you can't force them to.
No.
You have to accept that. And then it's the scary moment where you're like, I see this. This is what the evidence is.
Yeah.
Am I going to leave this relationship? That's a really scary thing to do. So
yeah,
it's not easy. Like I always tell people, like it's very complicated. You're going to have to make really hard decisions with incomplete information.
Yeah.
And then, I've talked to divorce coach like Cindy Stibbard, is like, by the time they wanted to do the work, it was 4 years later. I was just so checked out and resentful that I was like, now I don't want to do the work. So
yes,
I don't know what the answer is. You have to have 2 people on the same page, which is rare.
It's rare. That's why I'm trying to make it like my mission in life. And it might be more of a traditional view, but doing the deeper work to build that strong foundation in the beginning is good insurance against divorce, is good insurance against really negative conflict patterns. I'm not saying it's going to make that it never happens. Like, that's impossible to ascertain so early. What is their parents' marriage like? Do they have a quality relationship? What is their relationship like with their siblings, their family? How aware are they of their own traumas, of their own strengths? Are they in a place in their life where they're happy with their job? Are they miserable in their career? And especially with the men I see, if a man, like the livelihood that men get is from like procreate, protect, provide. Those are like the highest orders. If they don't feel competent at their job and their masculinity feels threatened there, it is absolutely going to translate in the home life of, I don't feel good here. I don't feel like I'm a good provider. You don't respect me, whether that's real or imagined. It's such a nuanced experience. Same thing with women. Do they have a sense of self and self-worth prior to being in the relationship? If they don't, are they working on it? Are they in individual therapy? Are they the healthiest, ideally, version of themselves when you're meeting? And that can take a while to get to, and you might not find the person immediately. It's better to wait 5 or so years to then be married and potentially be married the rest of your life if that's your goal, rather than, I just want to be married. and
Mm-hmm.
being rushed to be in this. It's not like a trophy. It's not like a gold medal where you're like, look at me, I did this thing. But
Yeah.
decades ago, that was a societal status symbol of like, oh, you're unmarried, oh, you're unwed. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay now to do that as a delay. It's not as stigmatized. And I think many couples with that whole change piece, when they're coming in, one wants to, one doesn't, they're not on the same page from the beginning. And so why could we reasonably expect them? I get why they want to be on the same page, but if I saw these things in you from day one that I wanted to fix or that I wanted to change about you, and I never told you and you never knew them about yourself, obviously 5 to 10 years in, I'm going to be resentful that you haven't fixed these things that you never even knew. And then I'll bring it up to you. And then we're like, well, what do you mean? What am I talking about? Have you not been in this relationship the last 5 or 10 years? And the guy's like, when did this conversation start? Like, what is happening here? Don't think the same way. And I think our biggest downfall as women, and this is something I've learned from my mentors over the years, is we expect men to be like us. We interact with you in a way that you think the way that we do, and you don't. And you have so many other unique, wonderful, very respectable ways that you interact with the world that we could benefit and learn from, and vice versa, that you could benefit from us. And if we learn how to get on the same page or as close to it, that's what I think sets up that prevention of, well, I wanted to change for 3 years and I told you, and I've pushed couples on this too. And I'm like, how did you tell them? Well, I hinted. Well, well, I threatened to leave. Well, all these protest behaviors that, again, because we don't learn effectively, we do those out of just kind of instinct. And I said, so, okay, I think I know what happened here. Your brain checked off the box of I told them.
Mm-hmm.
What do you imagine your partner received that as though? And the guy's like, I literally didn't even notice the book. Like, she thing that I purposefully ignored it, again, projecting that you do the thing that we do. He's like, I didn't see it. Like, why didn't you just ask me? And women are like, well, why didn't you read my mind? Because we think that if you really loved us, you would just know how to do all these things and we wouldn't have to ask. And if we don't have to ask, that it's going to somehow feel better. Mm-hmm. Or that if I have to ask you to bring me flowers once a week because it makes me feel good and I want to be close to you, then it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. Like, as a society, we have to get away from that whole, if they wanted to, they would. They should just know. Like, but are they mind readers? I've done this for a long time and I'm not even a mind reader. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm very good at reading people, but even I cannot just be like, this is what Rob is thinking right now. That's not human. That's just not possible.
Yeah, I think one of the things with that is like, how do you even say the words? I'm big on like learning like almost a script. Like, I'm going to take out my phone and be like, this is going to sound awkward or needy, but I feel like this. And like, if you can at least have a way to get it out, that's not like, you didn't, you know, it's just those first 3 words can derail everything. So I think that's an important thing that try to learn. It's going to be uncomfortable. Like, I love the Chris Voss, like, brace the bad news. Like, this is going to make me sound like a jerk, or, you know, like, I didn't really like when you did this. And it takes a little bit of the sting out. Whereas if you just say it the way we usually say it, you didn't, we're defensive, we checked out. Now we're just like cementing that resentment even more. And then it's like, it builds, and it's like not surprising how relationships get, off the rails so quickly.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a communication pattern that's learned through the decades, that women get very resentful and critical because we change by wanting to avoid being ostracized socially or being seen as less than. And so we're very motivated when people criticize us to be like, oh my gosh, wait, I don't want to be criticized. I'll be better, right? That's kind of like that pattern. We and interact with you in the same way, but you are not motivated by that. You're motivated by winning and doing well and being admired and appreciated. And so we ask calmly, hey, is now a good time, right? Timing is everything too, of how, like, not only the script of how to say it, but when to say it. You could have the perfect script at the wrong time and feel really, really incapable at making change because it's a timing thing. So checking in and asking, can I share something with you, right? Bracing him. The other day or the other morning or whatever, when I experienced, I'm not even going to use the word you at all in the script. When I experienced, I'm going to say the behavior, walking in and seeing the dishes weren't done, right? Because then you can just be like, okay, she's not talking about me. Like, I can deny this. It's fine. I felt unhelped. I felt frustrated. I felt unheard, whatever it was. And this, it made me want to, right? Yell, this, that. And the story I made up in my head, or what my brain made it mean, was, and then you get to tell your partner the dragon lady narrative or the dragon man narrative of who it wanted to turn you into. And I share, and this is something that's worked in like my relationship is, and I realized I don't want to see you that way. I don't ever want to see you in that light where I view you so negatively. And that's something I got to work on, right? And taking full ownership completely reduces defensiveness. And it would help me to feel closer to you, and for me to feel like we're really in this together, if you could let me know kind of what happened with that, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than accusing, and you just forgot the dishes, and you were playing video games, and you went out with the boys, blah, whatever we make up as true. The guy's like, fuck it, believe it if you want. I'm not fighting with you. I'm not winning this. Clearly you have decided I'm a piece of shit person. I'm not going to win at changing your mind. Mm-hmm. Why fight? And that's where couples get locked in that pattern of, he doesn't talk to me anymore. Yeah, because every time he tries to tell you the truth or talk to you, you criticize him as if he's a woman and think that's going to motivate him to change. Which is not. So if we want you to change or do something, all we have to do is literally ask very assertively and nicely. And 9 times out of 10, unless you can't do it for some reason, you've already committed to somebody else, you want to follow through on your word, you'd be like, okay. Mm-hmm. Like, but we assume that you're not going to, mm-hmm. or that, or our parents modeled to us. Every time my mom asked my dad, he always was like, oh, you always need me, right? Like, mm-hmm. This is all that goes into why that pattern happens, where we don't get the change that we want because we don't know how to ask for it, or we ask for it in a way that would work on us or our species, mm-hmm. and we learn how it's going to work on you instead. Hey, I would have sex with you every single day if when I got home there were no dishes in the sink. Done. The equation of winning is like, what? Like, this right. is the best thing in the world. But then typically women are like, well, I don't want to reward him and he should just know to do. I'm like, you got to put that down.
Right.
Successful relationship, at least in a normative sense, stop whatever you're doing, unlearn it and relearn how to do it. And you're going to have to challenge beliefs about yourself, and power and control and vulnerability as strength. And that's where we can make a big stride, is those communication scripts. That's why I dedicated my life to helping people with confidence and assertiveness. And it's not who cares, because obviously they care if people don't like them, but like, what is it really going to cost you at the end of the day if you keep worrying about other people and what they think of you, and you're not even on the top of your list? Like, what do you think about you? And that's why I help clients shift and become more assertive and ask for their needs. I would rather find out in week 2 that you won't be able to meet my needs than get a divorce after 5 years and go, have you been like this the whole time? And you're like, yes, I literally told you this since date 1. I'm like, but I can still fix you.
Right.
Delusional.
Yeah. Wow, there's so many good things that, but I think also, like, the person, the woman or the man, has so much evidence of this not working and this spiraling, that they're just like, here we go again. Why should I try? And you really do need to come at it with this, like, I'm just, as an experiment, gonna write down what Talia said. I'm gonna say it just like this. I might even read it off a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And what's weird, and I'll tell you, like, as a guy, when I hear that, like, it is like, oh, it's not, doesn't sting as much. This is interesting she put it that way. But here, and I'm curious to know the psychology behind this, I'll maybe go do the dishes or something, but then like 12 hours later, I get like this kind of resentment. Maybe it's like, well, what about my feelings? And now I made her happy. I did what she wanted, but I kind of get a little like almost like a kid, like, now I'm kind of pissed, and now I need to find a way to maybe hit the ball back and express it. Like, any thoughts on how the guy, after he handles the news well, can like also express what he's feeling, that he has trouble getting out?
Such a great question. And I think you can handle the kind of the feelings in live time, and women can also be better about, I would like you to do this. Here's what it would mean for me. What do you as the guy need from me for that to happen? What can I do to make it easier on you to give me what I want and need, is how that we can have the discussion while it's happening and we're kind of making the deal. And being, if we're safe and not a dragon lady when you tell us the truth, come to us, right? 12 or so hours later, hey, I had this really cool or weird or new experience when I was doing the dishes. Can I share with you? And then if we're, again, this is the key, it takes a long time to get there sometimes. If we're safe to tell the truth, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want you to feel resentful.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, if you, even if you don't know it right now, can you let me know if it dawns on you what you need to shift that? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it would really help if you said thank you. And so many of the men I work with are so underappreciated. It breaks my heart. I've left sessions after crying. I'm a person, like before I'm a therapist. It's heartbreaking how that parent-child dynamic can play out sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
couple relationships. I'm not going to thank him. I'm like, who the fuck are you to think that you're just owed this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do all these things and you don't have to appreciate it. Do you want to ever get those things again? You have to appreciate it, because
Mm-hmm.
what you appreciate grows.
Mm-hmm.
I focus on it and I say thank you, the likelihood you'll do it again is increased. This is what do we tell kids growing up with manners? When somebody does something for you, or if you want something, you say please and thank you. But we're
Mm-hmm.
not teaching kids that as much anymore, I think, or there was like a gap there where parents weren't around, they were working, they couldn't teach them, right, or enforce it. Really being appreciative. And I say thank you probably too much, but I have like the best relationship ever because we don't get in fights because we're too busy appreciating each other.
Right.
How great it feels
Mm-hmm.
by being unappreciative, right? So I think to answer that, like the latter part of, once you are doing that and you're feeling that resentment, are you not being appreciated for the thing? And can you go in and ask? And I know it sounds sometimes like too needy or vulnerable to share, but that's the only way your partner's really going to know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, for me to continue doing the dishes like you asked, and again, thank right, lead by example, thank you for asking so nicely. I would love to be appreciated for that. And
Mm-hmm.
appreciation for me looks like thank you. Appreciation for me looks like checking in to see if I need, like, give them an operational definition of appreciation, because we might not have the same definition. For me, it could be a kiss. For you, it could be verbally thank you. So here I am thinking I'm appreciating you all the time by kissing you, but I'm never saying thank you. And then you're interacting with me going, you never appreciate me. And this is, again, in a lot of couples, the guy's like, I literally do it all the time. I do it.
Mm-hmm.
I show you I love you by having a roof over your head, by giving you the ice cream you want, by getting the low fat yogurt. And she's like, well, not that. I need this. Completely discounting and not appreciating what he
Mm-hmm.
is providing, and instead complaining of what he's not providing. And this goes both ways, but this is just my own kind of clinical, what I see in my cases.
Yeah. I don't know how any relationship makes it, Talia, after hearing this. It's like, this is like PhD level stuff that you need to learn. And I think the one piece that I've started to practice more, that I think divorce is really like gets you into the bad habit, or a marriage that isn't healthy, you have to say, I'm feeling kind of resentful. If once you get that out, it takes such a load off of you, the other person. So like it's so scary to say, but like it almost always you feel better. The other person probably feels better. Okay, he's being honest with me.
Yeah.
I can respect that. Like there's a safety in like saying things that are uncomfortable because you know that they're being said, as opposed to, no, what's the point of it? So, but yes.
Like, yeah, and it's such a good point to bring up, to not be afraid to share that. And you're not blaming the partner of like, you make me feel resentful. It's, I want to share with you something I think we could work on and fix and solve and be better at. I'm feeling resentful about, again, making it about the behavior, about my perceived, take ownership, my perception of the inequality of us getting the housework done, and then ask, do you see that too? And this is something I work on with a lot of my college students when they're trying to adjust to like new roommates, dorms, etc., because we all assume we're egocentric, that people are raised the same way, and then we get a rude awakening oftentimes, or when you co-date with people, you're like, that's what? Like, you just throw your clothes anywhere. You know, we have these complaints, and do you share the same perception? I notice this. Are you noticing this as well? And that's going to cut through a lot of conflict, because they literally at that first step might be like, I don't notice that. And you get angry, first of all, because you're just like, how could you not notice it? And I can do a whole other episode on why we notice things differently. Make sure that they have a buy-in to actually hear you before you just go in and be their judge and jury, and they literally have no clue what you're talking about from step one. Like, invite them to join with you. I'm noticing and feeling resentful about, it feels as though I am the only one doing the dishes. It feels lopsided. I want to share that with you because I don't know that that's your reality as well. Can we talk about this? Sure. Right? Versus, you never do that. Oh, look at you sitting on the couch, mister. I don't do the dishes again. Like the mocking, the contempt, the criticism, it devolves so quickly a relationship. heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you said so many good things there. One is I definitely would love to know how you can find a good couples therapist or therapist. I think that's a real roadblock. Either they're booked till November, or
Yep.
I would go in once and I'm like, they don't really get it. Like, that's a hard thing for one. And the other idea I had, I'm curious your thoughts before we go. Do you see people like, what are your thoughts on like proactive couples counseling? I heard like Dax Shepard say, before me and Kristen Bell even got married, I'm like, we're going to couples therapy. Like, that sounds like a good idea because like you said, like you find all this stuff out when it's too late usually. It'd be so cool to be like, all right, we're getting a tune-up. It's our twice a year session.
Yeah, so I will answer the second question first. Make sure that you go before it gets bad. If you like your relationship and you would like it to stay that way, couples therapy acts as an insurance policy. And we are an outside observer, ideally very well trained, to get ahead of, I think this may be a fight eventually. You're not fighting about it now, but you're bringing it up as a pattern. Let's get ahead of it. Just typically, hopefully people go to the doctor, they get wellness checks, the car, the this, the that. But as the jokes go, that light's been on the dashboard forever. It'll go away.
Right.
Not going to go. The relationship will go away if you translate to couples therapy. So yeah, get in early and often, and go for, premarital counseling, any big life event in your relationship, go in for a tune-up and see if you're doing it the best you can. And how to find a good couples therapist. You have a really good website and a directory, I think, that people could join if they're hoping to find one, and being really diligent about like looking on social media or Google, or if you like an influencer or something, you can always try sending us a message. I see all of mine. I don't get to reply to all of them, or I can't, but hey, do you have any advice? Or looking at websites like couples therapists who specializes in whatever you're going through, zip code, Google, and SEO will handle the rest. And then vet them, right? If they have a ZocDoc, take a look. Some therapists do and don't have Yelp. You can see on their websites. We're allowed to take testimonials now, as long as it doesn't put undue burden on the client, which we do ethically before. So just take a look and see if you like their vibe. That's the good news about social media. You can kind of guess and get to know us. If we have podcasts, like, I ingest our information prior to booking a session. And if it's not a good fit, we'll give you referrals too. If you ask, like, hey, this was great, I kind of need something in this realm. Do you know of anybody? Utilize us as a resource. That would be my best overview, I would say.
You know what? I never even thought that I could do an online couples therapy. And like, instead we went and found somebody like out of the phone book pretty much. Like, it was blind. We went, you can't tell right away. So we go 3 times and I'm like, I'm not feeling this. And then we're out $500 and then we just give up on it. Yeah. But yeah. Like you said, like, if you can
read the websites for sure. It's the most therapy is the most psychologically intimate relationship a person could ever have, is what I like to say. It's kind of my line. Make sure it's a good fit. So do your research, do your work, Google, read the bio. We do 15-minute phone consults. What's our vibe on the phone? Do we show up to the phone consult? Do we can't, like, you can learn so much about, do you think this person would care? And I've like dedicated my life to it. I think I was born to be a therapist. So find somebody who's equally as passionate if you can. They want they care about you as much as you care about the situation, but not more. That's kind of a lopsided thing in an unhealthy direction. But like, find somebody who gives a shit to work with, and that you think that they can provide you the results that you want, because it's their specialization.
And going back to where we started, it's why like social media and like you being able to show who you are, a podcast like that, you can learn so much about it. So it is really important for therapists, divorce coaches, all these people to, show off their stuff, because somebody can like really get to know you, like, without even having a call. I can just watch a few videos and be like, I like Talia, I like her vibe, I like how she gets it, like, versus like Google 3 reviews, 5-star, okay, I guess, like,
kill each other. So
in my zip code, takes my insurance. Save my marriage, please.
Yes, so we have so many things we brought up today that we should definitely do more episodes on this. I will send you my link so we can book some more, but I want to say thank you. This was a very lively, dynamic conversation, and when I go back with the transcription, I'll pick some questions and then we can do that in our next episode.
Secretly, these are just therapy sessions for me, so thank you for humoring me.
Well, it's good content for me, so win-win.
Exactly. I think that's a little business model we can talk about too. Like, I got an idea.
Perfect.
Yes. Well, thanks, Talia. I appreciate it.
Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.